Morning, everyone. I'm Carrie Forte. I'm from the ACE National Office, and I'd like to welcome you today to Melissa's webinar. Before I introduce our speaker, I wanted to remind everyone that the next scheduled ACE webinar is January 26th, presented by Jonathan Tyson on ergonomics in our community. And the registration link is now available on the ACE website. Also, this is a friendly reminder to renew your ACE membership if you've not done so already, and to make sure that your profile is up to date to remain current with all the new information coming out. During the webinar, you're able to submit any questions you have via the chat box on your webinar platform. At the end of the webinar, I will relay your questions to our speaker, who will then provide an answer. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on the members area of the website later this week. With all that being said, I'm now very pleased to introduce Melissa Statham, who will be presenting the webinar entitled When Technology Hurts. Melissa is an ergonomist at the Occupational Health Clinics for Ontario Workers, servicing Windsor and Sarnia regions. Her undergraduate and graduate degrees were both completed at the University of Windsor, and she is a certified professional ergonomist. Her work experience has allowed her to practice ergonomics, in a variety of industries, both proactively and reactively. Presently, she has been exploring the contribution of psychosocial factors to musculoskeletal disorders. We are thrilled to have Melissa join us today. Melissa, I'll hand the mic over to you now.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me fine. If you can't, just let us know in the chat box. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm happy to speak to everyone today. We're going to be looking at ergonomics and musculoskeletal injuries, just as a result of the new technology that we're seeing out there now. And when I say new technology, I'm really kind of talking about laptops, tablets, and cell phones now that are more dominant in the workplace now than they used to be, as well as in different environments like the classroom as well. Sorry, just trying to move my slides ahead and they don't seem to want to go. 1 second. There we go. Just a brief overview of my presentation. I'm going to look at the internet use and changes with some recent statistics that actually came out just this November in Canada, some challenges that we're seeing as a result of the new technology, some of the rising musculoskeletal disorders, some literature that has been going on with laptops, cell phones, and tablets, some possible solutions to prevent these musculoskeletal disorders, and also what we can do. And I'll take any questions at the end. So since internet's adoption in 1995, we've really seen it this goes to just to 2011, and this is a US statistic. I can find a Canadian statistic, but I couldn't find just the right graph I wanted. This one just kind of shows the increase in the adoption of the internet from 1995 to 2011, where we can see just about 80% of the population being tapped into the internet now. The sound unfortunately doesn't work, and this was just more of a humorous sound bite, and it was that connection sound that we used to hear when we were dialing into the internet. And we had to wait and then possibly get disconnected and then reconnected again. And we've really come a long way since then, in that if we don't have internet, basically, at the snap of our fingers, we're instantly agitated. But I mean, the struggle was real in 1995. So internet use in Canada, we're really seeing this shift from desktop computers now to more mobile devices. And I mean, in the workplace, it allows us more mobility and flexibility to take our laptops or tablets to meetings that are either off-site or in a separate boardroom. It's just that flexibility that we're looking for, even that work-life balance, allowing us to have a laptop to work from home. So it's some of the reasons that we're seeing this shift. 3 out of 4 Canadians now own smartphones, and that's 49% of the time we spend online is typically through these types of mobile devices. Social media still tends to be the top activity performed on these portable devices, but when we look at work, it's typically a lot of emails is one of the top activities we see. And now, interestingly enough, the fastest growing demographic from 2013 to 2016 is 65 to 74-year-olds. They seem to be slow to get on board with the whole internet, but now they're really embracing it. And I think as you see the population age, this is only going to increase more. Tablets now have even overtaken desktop computers for gaming, or gamers rather. Now they can kind of support the technology that they once had to go to desktop computers for. Now tablets are replacing them. June 2014, Ericsson Mobility actually predicted that there would be as many as 5.6 billion smartphone subscriptions globally by the end of 2019. Currently, 1.3 million Canadians use only mobile devices to access the internet. Now, the CIRA research done in March 2017 in Canada, and actually this was just published in November a month ago, which was kind of exciting because I got to update some of my statistics now. And just kind of going back to that graph in the beginning slide, we can see now that nearly 90% of Canadians use the internet um, today. And when we look at the amount of data that we use or that Canadian homes support, 42% of Canadians with home internet are now having to have more like 200 or more gigabytes of data, with most homes actually having unlimited data. I mean, when you think of your own home environment, we typically have quite a few mobile devices that are accessing the internet. And also, you have those types of Netflix now. We have TVs that we can use to access the internet in our cell phones and laptops and tablets. And all this is tapping into our data. So you see a lot more people going with unlimited packages now. 71% of Canadians spend at least 3 to 4 hours on the internet each day. The use of mobile devices to access the internet has more than doubled since 2013, where 2013 we had 32%, and now in 2017 we have 67%. So it's really increasing substantially just within the past 3 years. On the bar graph on the right here, these shows the different age populations and whether they access the internet daily, a few times a week, or within the past month. And you can see that most people, and regardless of demographic, they are accessing the internet daily. I mean, the only exception we hear is 75 plus, but that could just be, when internet was first brought in, they were, kind of maybe too far beyond that they didn't really grasp a hold of that. So what kind of devices are we seeing people use to access the internet now? It's really changed since 2015 and 2017. We still have the desktop computer or laptop computers being the primary source, but you can see that number is decreasing, where smartphone and tablet use to access the internet is increasing. The TV there seemed to have a bit of a dip in 2016, but is about 14%. And now we're having these connected home devices that are accessing the internet now that are coming to light. So these bar graphs are probably going to change when we look at them about 5 years from now. So the number of internet connected devices, like I said before, they're increasing per home. Typically, there's 46% of Canadian households have 5 or more internet connected devices. And I think when you think of your own house, I think of mine and my daughters, they each have, where they're 3 and 6, but they have tablets they use. Me and my husband have our cell phone, and then we have laptops. So, I mean, we kind of slip into that percentage, if not 4 devices, which seems kind of crazy, but I think when you think on it, and you have all these connected devices in your home, you probably are at that 5 range. So how are Canadians spending their time online? Well, email seems to be still predominantly at 91%, and we have online banking at 68%. 61% is news and current events, 57% on social media, 49% to shop online, 38% is to watch movies or TV or any type of video, and 33% to listen to podcasts or music. The next just is a more detailed breakup of how Canadians, I'm not going to go through it all. You can look at it just if you're kind of interested in some further like job hunting and gaming. It just kind of breaks it down a little bit more into what Canadians are actually spending their time on the internet for. So like I said, when we look at new technology, what we're talking about is laptops. And although they might not seem new, it is definitely something that we're seeing that is coming into the workplace kind of in full force. I think most workplaces, if they're not used predominantly, they do have access to them when they go on the road or they go to offsite meetings. We're seeing a lot of tablets now in the workplace. My husband works for Hydro One, and he's got a tablet that he has to bring out into the field. with him. We're seeing new technology in classrooms now. And our phones, a lot of times now we're seeing companies issue phones and you're expected to answer emails or respond to any text at that time on those. So those are kind of the three devices that we're going to focus in on today. So laptops, we really have seen this price gap between laptops and desktop computers really become narrow. It's within $50 now. I can remember when I went to university, I had the choice at the time having a desktop or laptop computer, and I went with a desktop because at that time the price, it was about like there was about $500 difference between it, and when you're a university student, that's huge. And so I had a desktop computer at that time. But now we're seeing 68% of workplaces are going to laptops. And again, this is because of that mobility. Sometimes it's a small workspace, so it can only accommodate something like a laptop. And it allows the flexibility to work from home, which a lot of workplaces are allowing that work life balance, and people are having the opportunity to work from home 1 day a week. There's a lot of laptops now that are also incorporating what's known as a hybrid laptop that allows that touch screen function as well as using the keyboard. So it's kind of almost like having a tablet and a laptop combined. So we're seeing more and more of that in the workplace as well. Two-thirds of Canadians own a smartphone right now. In 2014, 49% of Canadians owned a tablet, which actually was up 10% from 2013. 28.8 million Canadians are wireless subscribers, and more Canadians now own cell phones than landlines. I know a lot of people now, and myself included, have gotten rid of landlines and gone nearly just to having our cell phones, because when you think of it, your cell phone is on you all of the time. So there doesn't seem to be that need for the landline there was before, except I feel like I might have to revert back to it once my daughters want to use the phone, and then I'm going to have to give up mine. But for now, we do not have a landline. And right now, Canadians are consuming more data. Each person, on average, consumes 1 gig per month. And just to put that in perspective, because I am definitely not an IT person, I don't really understand the whole gigabytes. I know it's a lot, but this kind of puts it into perspective. So in 1 month, you could surf the internet for 44 hours, use Facebook for 51 hours, watch 68 YouTube videos, send over 34,000 emails, use Google Maps for 17 hours, Skype for 4 hours, or listen to 256 songs on Spotify. Well, those numbers seem quite large. However, when we think that we're on the internet 3 to 4 hours a day, I mean, it really would add up. It doesn't actually 1 gig in 1 month. I'm sure a lot of us go well beyond that. So we're seeing this rise in the tablet in the workplace, and I found this from quote from Apple CEO Tim Cook, which I found quite interesting. And it stated that through the last quarter, which is just 2 years after they had shipped the initial iPad, they've sold 67 million. And to put that in context, it took them 24 years to sell that many Macs, 5 years to sell that many iPods, and over 3 years to sell that many iPhones. So the tablet is really surging. And so, why are corporations going to the tablet? Well, reasons are mobility. Again, like I've said before, we want that flexibility to be able to go anywhere and have the information we need at our fingertips. They're easy to use. They have a lot of companies now are having enterprise or company level apps, and the tablets support these really well compared to desktop computers. And sales teams love iPads. Again, lightweight mobility, they can have all that information right there. But there are some reasons that we're seeing people not going to the tablet right now. And a lot of it is security reasons, which I think they're trying to kind of iron all of that out. The total cost of them, the tablets can be more than laptops, but again, I think that gap is even narrowing now. There's an issue of having backup data access, and then you also have to have additional IT support for the device management. So you not only would have your desktop computers, but then they would need to support any issues that may occur on tablets now. So this rise in the tablet in the workplace, just to put it in perspective, in 2011, there was 13.6 million units in workplaces, and then in 2016, 96.3 million. So there's been a 48% annual growth in tablets. And at one time, we saw tablets being used more by senior executives, where now we're seeing more people like IT managers and your typical workforce using them because the benefits for them are quite substantial as well. So, what are tablets used for in the workplace compared to home? Well, we have 73% is used for web browsing, 69% for email, 67% in order to work remotely. And then compared to the home, again, you're still using it a lot for web browsing and email, and then there's that gaming aspect as well. The sectors that seem to be using tablets a lot are education, healthcare, retail, government, industrial, financial services, technology, legal, energy, and hospitality. So, interestingly enough, when you look at some of the European countries, tablets are the only business device that they're being used for 40% of the working population. So the number of workers using the tablets as standalone devices in these countries we see rising. And I think that holds true for North America as well. The rise in tablet, again, is that increased like push for mobility and convenience. And again, we're seeing a lot of these hybrid devices that you see a picture of there on the right emerging as a viable alternative to, your desktop or just a laptop computer. So we have all these new technology and corporations are really embracing it. It's a great thing. Again, we have that work-life balance, we have mobility, and we can have that information there. We potentially environmentally don't need to print anything out because we can just have our laptop or tablet have that information that we need. But similar to when they introduced computers for the first time, we're having the same issues. So you can see a picture there on the top, and that was one of the initial computers in a workplace. And the issue that they had is that they had a keyboard fixed right to a monitor. Well, when we think of that, that's exactly what we're doing with laptops, and exactly what a tablet is in essence, because the keyboard is right attached to the monitor itself. So what they found at this time is there was an increase in complaints of work-related musculoskeletal claims among workers, and we're going back to that. So we need to maintain good posture and designed, and a lot of these um, like tablets and cell phones, they're actually designed, they weren't being designed to be used for long-term use. It was something, you would be able to hold in your hand, have information easily, but now it's turned to something that we're using for longer term. What they have found that's good about tablets is we tend to move around a lot more. And as an ergonomist, that's something we preach is movement. You never want to be in one position too long. Movement really is the key. So sitting too long, standing too long is never good. So tablets, it's good. We're out there, we're moving. But what we're seeing at the cost of being able to have more mobility and flexibility, we're having higher strain on the neck and shoulder muscles compared to desktop computers because you can see the postures you're using on them. You have a laptop rested on your legs in this picture. Sometimes you're holding one with your hand, and typically your neck is flexed forward while using these. So a lot of times too, what is not happy is there's not an ergonomic program instilled in any of the corporations when people are getting tablets to use. So they're given these devices and all is well, but then we're not really accounting for how long we're using them, the position that they're placed in, and that then in turn is leading to musculoskeletal disorders. So what needs to happen as far as employers go is we need to monitor the time that is spent on these mobile devices. Is it something that we just access rather quickly for a short periods of time, or are we expected to be on these types of devices for the majority of the day? And how you answer those questions is going to depend on what type of setup that you're going to need. So again, we are able to improve this work-life balance, but it's at the cost of poor ergonomic setup, and this is often overlooked, and you see a lot of what's happening in these pictures. And I previously, this is how I would work at home, is place it on my tabletop and go to town that way. And you can see what's wrong in these pictures. And so if it's something you're going to be doing weekly, then you really need to pay attention to how these devices are set up, because in the long run, it could really lead to some type of musculoskeletal disorder. So the implications also are really huge for the younger generation because they're growing up, they're completely immersed in these technologies, and they're at key developments of musculoskeletal growth. So it's even more alarming for even younger children. So we're seeing neck and shoulder pain that is more prominent with the use of smaller devices. And we're not taking into account proper positioning of these devices because, again, they were not designed for long-term use. And this can lead to permanent damage and lifelong neck pain. So you see now there's a lot of push in the education system for there to be a tablet for every student because it is a great learning tool. I cannot deny that, but this is typically what you see. You see the tablets placed directly on the desktop and then the children are interacting with them. They've found that college students with high smartphone usage will experience impaired hand function and thumb pain because of using small devices like phones. Well, now we have a younger generation using tablets set up in this way. And again, they're at such a key moment of skeletal growth that it really could lead to some permanent damage, especially in their neck area. So musculoskeletal discomfort has actually been associated with children using laptops and computers for prolonged poor posture. And what was alarming about this study is that they surveyed them, and regardless of the children saying that they experienced some pain, 26% of them would just continue going on despite having this pain. And we all know that at that point, once you're experiencing the pain, there could be some potential damage occurring and permanent at that. So considerations for typing posture, keyboard height, and workstation setup aren't being considered in the classroom for children. And again, it is really at these key periods that we really, need to have some type of intervention here. And it's a direction I would like to see some improvements being made in the workplace. We are seeing some improvements, but not when it comes to tablets, not necessarily thinking about how we should set them up. And I mean, we still go into workplaces that they're giving laptops. I was at one last week, and they were directly on the work surface, on the workstation, and that's how they use them. So I think we can benefit in both of these areas from proper ergonomic programs and setups. This is just a study that looked at tablet and desktop computer use and also added in those paper tasks in children. And they found that through 3D muscle activity around the neck and shoulder, that tablets were actually associated with more neck and trunk flexion, more flexed and elevated shoulders, and greater muscle activity around the neck. So we know that then in the workplace, in the classroom, that these types of devices can lead to musculoskeletal discomfort. So the areas that we're seeing it here are the neck, the elbow, shoulder, wrist, and back. And you can see how this lady is sitting, and that's a common setup when you think of a tablet being used. You're holding it a permanent grip in one hand, so you have that static grip, which is leading to some wrist pain. Your opposite hand is interacting with the screen, so it's typically flexed at the elbow, and you have some abduction potentially with the shoulder, and it's held, elevated. And then you have the neck pain, which is a very obvious case there with your neck flexed forward in order to view the screen because it's not directly in front of you as a laptop would even be. Laptop does require obviously some flexion if it's on the workstation, but this position of the tablet is even worse. So musculoskeletal disorders related to cell phone and tablet use are on the rise. The increased time spent on these devices, the awkward postures, the force, mechanical pressures, and repeated loading and duration of loading are leading to these common musculoskeletal disorders. So the ones that we're seeing are typically of the upper extremity. And so we have Blackberry thumb or de Quervain's tenosynovitis, text neck or eye hunch, and that's a result of looking down at these devices. Cell phone elbow or cubital tunnel syndrome, eye strain, back pain, and carpal tunnel syndrome are some of the upper extremity musculoskeletal disorders that we're seeing on the rise as a result of these new technological devices. So the thumb, 50% of the hand's functioning is performed with the thumb, but we're performing excessive movements with our thumb when we're using these devices, and we're using our thumbs in motions that they weren't designed to be used for, which is leading to these types of conditions. The neck, we're holding our neck, flexing it down statically, which is leading to fatigue and discomfort. Our elbow, we're having that static flexion of the elbow, whether it's holding our cell phones to our ears or we're at a fixed laptop and we're bent at 90 degrees, our elbows, we're having more compression of the nerves because of that. Shoulder, we're supporting these devices and we're reaching to the screens to interact with them. So a lot of those hybrid computers that allow for the screen to be touched and even your laptop, depending on how it's set up, you can have excessive reaches being performed repetitively. The back is a direct result of all the postures. If you have, your neck's not in line, you're reaching with your shoulder, well then whatever you're sitting on, you're not sitting back in your chair and it's not being supported the way it should be. So to just touch on some of these common ones, the first we have de Quervain's, and this is the inflammation of the tendons that connect the thumb to the wrist. So again, thumbs weren't designed for this forceful repetitive motion. They were actually designed to stabilize. We're using them in opposition to the fingers, but now the way we're using them in order to text, although they can do that movement, they weren't designed for that. So this is where we're leading to the swelling of the tendons there. So the symptoms that often accompany this type of musculoskeletal disorder are painful snapping when you're bending the thumb, some pain and tingling or loss of sensation, and there are various treatments for it, but just like in any type of ergonomic approach, we want to be proactive and we want to hit that area before we even get to some type of musculoskeletal injury. Eye hunch or text neck is a musculoskeletal disorder related to looking down at tablets. All these devices are quite small, and as you see in this picture, you're not holding them directly in front of your eyes and raising your arms, you're looking down with your neck. So the strain on the neck muscles increases 3 to 5 times when using a tablet compared to sitting with your head in a neutral posture. Neck position increases the mechanical loads on our neck. So the loads on our neck as we flex our neck forward increase. And actually the next slide shows that the average human head weighs 10 to 12 pounds. And even shifting our neck forward just slightly 15 degrees, we increase the strain on our neck to about 27 pounds. And it's kind of alarming. I mean, you can look there to see which kind of color you fit into when you're texting. But if you're all the way, at 60 degrees, you have an additional 60 pounds of force on your neck. So this increases the forces on your cervical spine, and actually typically when we're texting, we're in that 45-degree mark. So that's 49 pounds of force being placed on the cervical spine. So what is that doing to our neck then? Well, it's stretching the tissues because you have long periods of time when you're looking down. They can get sore, inflamed, potentially lead to some type of muscle strain or pinched nerve, even as far as herniated disc. And over time, if this type of posture is obtained for too long, you can actually change the natural curvature of your neck. Back pain. We see a lot of back pain, upper back obviously, which is related to the flexion of the neck because you're looking down at these devices, but you also have it coupled with poor posture while you're sitting. If you're using any of the devices in this posture, even with your neck flexed, then you're not sitting back and you're not maintaining that natural S curvature of the spine. So you can get pain ranging from chronic nagging to sharp, severe pain or muscle spasms in your back as a result of using these types of technologies. Cell phone elbow or cubital tunnel syndrome. So again, that can be caused by, you see the diagram, or rather the picture at the bottom there, holding your cell phone up to your ear. I mean, I can relate to that for too long. You do get some fatiguing, even in your shoulder there, because you have it elevated as well. Or if you're typing with your arms bent at 90 degrees for too long, or if this prolonged flexion of the elbow, what happens is the ulnar nerve actually gets pinched. So you'll have numbness and tingling and pain, which are common symptoms in any type of musculoskeletal disorder, but it can actually worsen to hand fatigue and weakness, difficulty gripping, and curling of the pinky and ring finger. Carpal tunnel syndrome, which I'm sure everyone's aware of, is a very common musculoskeletal disorder that we hear a lot about. And that's the compression of the medium nerve as a result of repetitive motions, non neutral postures, excessive force, forceful and prolonged gripping. And when you talk about gripping here, we often, the tablet, we're holding that in your opposite hand and it's a static grip that we're seeing, unless you have a device that is holding it for you. That's a main cause of this. Eye strain, which isn't often talked about too much, but I have found it more and more common, even with the use of desktop computers, because of them being more pixelated. People aren't sitting as closely to them as they once did before, which is, I mean, I don't think you want to as well. But the issue with tablets and smartphones is that we actually hold these items closer to our face than we hold books. So what happens is our eyes are constantly needing to refocus and they work harder. We blink less often when we're looking at a computer screen. We typically blink around 18 times per minute, but when we're looking at these types of computer screens, we're actually only doing half of that. And what's happening is that our eyes aren't being lubricated, so they tend to become tired, dry, itchy, or you may experience blurred vision and even burning eyes as a result of it. Now, when we look at some literature, I'm going to go through some literature on laptops, tablets, and cell phones. Burkhout in 2004 looked at laptop setup and mechanical loads on the neck. And he looked at two different workstation setups, one as conventional, and when I say conventional, I mean just a laptop basically placed on a desktop, or a laptop station. And this is where they actually put the laptop on a stand and had an external mouse and keyboard. And what they found was that the second workstation setup resulted in decreased torque at the C7T1 and less perceived neck strain. And another study in 2010, it looked at the prevalence and intensity of pain in the musculoskeletal system of workers who regularly use laptop computers. And what they found that most organizations do not set the workstations up properly. So typically these laptops were placed directly on the work surface and they didn't have an external mouse or keyboard. And they found that the most frequent complaint was low back and neck pain. Now, flipping over to cell phones, Barolo in 2011 looked at Canadian university students and mobile device use. And he found that most participants reported pain in at least one body part, and typically it was the base of the right thumb, which makes sense because when you think of how you text, you typically are using your thumbs a lot. And if you're one-handed, if you're using it one-handed rather, typically most people are right-handed, so the right thumb makes sense in this case. So associations between time spent on the internet and pain in the base of the right thumb. So the more time that you spent on the internet, the more pain that was reported in the right shoulder and neck. In another study, it looked at the prevalence of cumulative trauma disorders of the upper extremities in 1,500 cell phone using college students. And in this study, they found that 18.5% had a cumulative trauma disorder, and most of the time it was reported in the thumb. And the common symptoms they found were pain and fatigue. Sharan in 2014, he looked at studied the musculoskeletal disorders of upper extremities due to extensive usage of handheld devices. And they concluded that mobile phones and gadgets that use predominantly the thumb to control or one finger were associated with a higher prevalence of musculoskeletal disorders. Now looking at tablets, Chang and Lau in 2016 looked at neck discomfort associated with tablet tilt angles. And what they did is they had a few different scenarios at different varying angles of the tilt of the tablet. And they found that the lowest angle was associated with increased neck discomfort, but its steeper tilt angles actually led to users to decrease their head and neck flexion, leading to more neutral postures. Young in 2012 was a similar study and looked at the head and neck postures using tablets in 4 configurations and found that the head and neck postures during tablet computing were improved by placing the tablet at higher, therefore lower gaze angles. And they also made the association and recommended that if cases were used, it allowed the tablets to be angled more easily. Another study by Young in 2013 assessed the postures of the shoulders and wrists and the muscle activity during touchscreen tablet use. And they found that touchscreen users were exposed to extreme risk postures and were at greater risk for developing musculoskeletal disorders and symptoms. So they suggested that tablets should be placed in cases or stands in order to be able to adjust this tilt angle of the screen rather than having that constant grip and supporting it in your opposite hand. Looking at cell phone screen size now, and I found this interesting. This was Steve Jobs, and when they were unveiling the iPhone 5 SE, and he actually looked at the ergonomics of the hand, and it was I've never really seen anyone that would really take this into account, but Steve Jobs famously believed that phones should match the ergonomics of your hand, and in 2010, as the competitors were selling larger devices, he basically mocked them and said that you can't get your hand around it, no one's going to buy it. I had a link here to the actual commercial that was on at that time, and it just basically said, you move your finger from here to here and here to here, showing that you could cover all areas on a cell phone screen, that it was just common sense. However, we do know now that it really doesn't matter. The cell phone size and screens seem to be getting bigger and bigger, and I don't think, really the screen size, anyone really is accounting for the ergonomics of the hand. I mean, a lot of these are like half the size of a tablet now. But it was interesting and kind of comforting to know at one point this was being considered. So if you were looking at screen size, what should you actually consider? Well, you should consider on your cell phone what you can actually see, what your thumbs can reach with while you're holding it in one hand, and what you can actually comfortably hold in your hand. So I found this quite interesting, and what it did, it looked at the average size of a woman's hand and a man's hand, which are at the far left, and then it compared them to the sizes of what you would need basically if you're using certain cell phones. So the first one circled there is the iPhone 6, which you can see is larger than the average woman or man's hand, as well as the Galaxy S5 and even the iPhone 6 Plus and Note 4 are even so large that, Shaquille O'Neal can even use it properly because his hand is smaller than what would be intended to being held if you were to use that size of phone. So this broke it down even further, and the red areas are the areas in which you would not be able to reach at all. And that being said, typically when you think of it, you're not really having to reach the top corner or bottom, like lower corner of your phone. But you can see the first diagram here with the women, and then the diagram on the right is for the men, and it's comparing the iPhone 6 and the Samsung Galaxy S5. And so you can notice with the Samsung Galaxy that those red areas are larger, and so there's more surface screen of the phone that you actually cannot reach with one hand, and that's obviously more for women and then men. Then when you flip forward to looking at the 6 Plus and the Galaxy Note 4 that are even larger cell phones, these red areas become quite a bit larger for both men and for women. And so there's even more areas within the phone screen that you're not able to touch using one hand. So that being said, then if some of these cell phones are too large to be gripped, what is the optimal grip? Well, optimal grip span is 4.5 to 9.5 centimeters. And what is happening typically when we have our cell phone, we have static muscle contraction, and we're holding onto it with one hand. It's going to lead to that local muscle fatigue. Well, a study in 2015 found that smartphone overuse actually enlarges the median nerve as a result of this constant gripping, and it causes pain in the thumb, decreased pinch strength, and hand functions. So we know now that um, this use of new technology is great, but it does have its bad parts, which is musculoskeletal disorders. So what can we do then now that we know that they exist? How can we better set them up? How can we better use them? Because after all, they are smartphones. So if we get to know them, there actually are functions built within these smartphones that can help us use them better, have us maintain more neutral postures. So I'm going to go through some of these different solutions that are out there. Well, first off, there's Bluetooth headsets. The Bluetooth headsets will allow us to be able to speak without holding a phone to our head. We can speak a lot of this text. You can speak to text. You can do all those types of functions. Even if you're on some type of a meeting or a long phone call, you can have a Bluetooth headset on or earbuds that eliminates this constant gripping and need to hold the phone to your ear. You need to make an effort to bring your phone to eye level instead of always bending your head down. Now, I realize you're not really ever going to hold your arms out because, again, that could lead to a different musculoskeletal disorder. But even if you're resting your arm on your desk and you bring your cell phone to eye level rather than looking down constantly, I think half of it is just being aware of your body's motions. And once you know that, hey, I'm doing that a lot, to change your behaviors even, just a little bit could really help you. You want to get to know your voice activated features. Smartphones, like I said before, are smartphones. They can do so much, but I was guilty of it until I developed this presentation approximately a year ago. I can text on my phone, I can use my social media, I can do all of that, but I just did it, with it in my hand. I never used any activated devices, any shortcuts, anything like that. Now I'm a little bit more educated in how to use my cell phone, so I'm using it better. Again, use your earbuds to allow for it to be hands-free. And again, just like in anything, if you do it too much, like some exercises to promote that blood flow and allow for mobility is always beneficial. So to go through some iPhone shortcuts, what you can actually do is you can bring your apps closer to you on the screen. So they actually go halfway down. So the only button on there, the home button, if you don't push it but you tap it 2 times, the apps actually come down to the bottom portion of your screen, which makes them a lot easier to reach with just your thumb. Another interesting thing it can do, and you might already have this on, and this is one of my favorite ones, is night shift. So you notice at night, basically your screen brightness is the same as the day, which can be quite dramatic and cause some squinting. Well, what you can actually do is have your phone automatically have a filter placed on it as soon as the sun goes down. And when the sun comes up, it automatically goes away. So it's called night shift on an iPhone. And you can set this, and it almost has a yellow hue to it. And at first, it seems a little bit difficult, like not difficult, but just different to look at. But once you get used to it, the daytime brightness, if it's accidentally taken off your phone, seems quite alarming, and you have that squinting of the eyes. You also have voice activation. So Siri is there to help you out, and you can use text by talking, and you just have to enable these functions on your smartphone in order to be able to use them. So Samsung has similar shortcuts. They have, you can use your phone with one hand. Again, it just is a matter of going in and selecting one-handed operation. A lot of times these functions are turned off on your phone. They do have a night mode in which a blue filter app can be downloaded, or I do believe the new ones you can actually, they come standard on the phone now as well. So it's similar to this night shift. And they have what is called S Voice, which allows you to talk by text and use voice control activation. So all these things allow you to not have to grip the phone, allow you to not have to hold the phone to your head, and allow you to not have to reach as far on the phone with your thumb. So when we look at laptops in the workplace, what are some solutions? Now these are not new at all. We just often, they seem to be overlooked. So laptops, we need to get them up off the desk. And so in order to do that, there's laptop risers. So this will bring the screen up to allow us to maintain neutral neck postures. There's also docking stations. So you could dock your laptop and then just use an external monitor, which can be hopefully set at the proper working height for you. And a very important thing with any type of laptop, especially if used predominantly, you want to have an external mouse and you want to have an external keyboard. The keyboard and mouse on the laptop, they're too compact. The mouse is located in the center and they don't allow for neutral upper extremity postures. There's also different types of tablet solutions that have came out. Ergotron has a few of them, but what you can do is that you could actually sync your tablet with your desktop or laptop computer, so then the information can be displayed on that. You can use external devices that are Bluetooth for your or for your tablet, so you can have an external keyboard and an external mouse, and then just use your tablet as the main screen. And another thing you can use is an inline document holder would be a relatively cost-effective solution to bring it up if you're referencing it as a document, similar to any documents you would put on an inline um, document holder. You could do that with your tablet. So similar to the bottom picture you have there, but the bottom picture actually is a tablet cradle that's made by Ergotron. But an easy solution, if it was something that you were just referencing in that manner, you could just put it on an inline document holder. They also have tablets that can be mounted side by side to your monitor. Again, that allows to maintain that neutral neck postures while you're using your computer and then referencing your tablet at the same time. There's also a variety of different tablet solutions that you can see that can be used out in the field. There's a tablet case that in the bottom left corner that you can then just slide your hand through, tighten it up, and then that prevents you having to have that grip. And because the tablet case and everything is larger than your hand, so this just it's allowing you to hold on to it without having to grip it. There's the one beside it that actually has a handle. And that handle can be pushed forward and used. It tilts it up a bit. It's not optimal, but it's better than it being flat on the work surface. There's different stands that can have it upright, just like in the top left. There's a C-clamp that you could use to mount it to your desk, or there's a variety of different stand-up stands as well that you could use. And another option too is that sometimes using the keyboard within a tablet isn't the greatest for everyone. So in the bottom right-hand picture, you can get styluses for laptops, or sorry, rather for tablets that could be a good alternative depending on what the person's preference is as well. So some classroom solutions, like I said, we're seeing these used in the classroom more. Stryker is someone that has been looking at different guidelines for the physical development of children, and he's actually came up with some set of guidelines, and they're similar to guidelines that we would recommend as well. You know, take a break from your computer every 30 minutes, and that's something ergonomists promote in the workplace. Mobility is the key, so we want you to be able to get up from your workstation. So print things to a printer that's not at your workstation, drink lots of water so you have to go to the washroom because that makes you get up, and just move around within your workstation. You want to use active input devices, so again, using those external products. And just you want to encourage movement, really. You want to alter your position. No one position for too long is good. And we need to look at the anthropometrics of the population using these devices. In the workplace, we really want to zone in on ergonomic programs and if your company actually has an ergonomic program. If we're wanting these types of technology used, we need to have something instilled to make sure that our workers are kept safe while using them. So you want to evaluate the time spent on tablets, phones, and laptops. What type of work is actually being performed on these devices? Do you require additional equipment in order to use these devices in a safe way? And if this gets too complex for any employer, you can always consult a professional in order to be able to set them up properly. Once you have a program in place, you might know exactly what someone is going to need as soon as, if they're using a laptop right off the bat, you can recommend either a docking station, a stand, an external mouse, and a keyboard. But you need to have something in place in order to address these ergonomic hazards. So what can you do personally? Well, you can take a break. Again, movement is the key. Get up out of your workstation. Use the 20-20 rule in order to reduce eye strain. So this rule is every 20 minutes, look about 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That gives your eyes a rest, allows for some relubrication, and to be able to refocus. You want to change your position throughout the day. No one position, again, is good for a long period of time. Try to make an effort to bring devices closer to eye level and be aware of your body and its mechanics and how it's looking. And if you have some type of discomfort, try to make those associations. My neck hurts, and then well, actually my tablet seems to be, I'm placing it down here all the time, and my neck seems to hurt every time I use my tablet. Well, you're making that association, so then there's something that you could possibly do in order to increase the height of that tablet and get better neutral postures of the neck. Do stretches throughout the day. Stretches promote blood flow, and blood flow is a great thing in order to repair muscle. and get to know your mobile devices because, like I said, we all have smartphones and they're called smartphones for a reason, so they can do a lot for us. We just need to get to know the functions within them in order to assist us. And that concludes my presentation for today. So if anyone has any questions now, I would be more than happy to take them.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, you can just write them in the chat box, and I'll ask Patricia or Melissa. We'll just give folks a chance to type in their questions. Okay, we have one coming, Melissa. Okay, we have one question here. What about small laptop screen size? For example, 13-inch.
I would treat that similar to a tablet. Again, I don't think that it's anything that has been designed to use for long-term use. However, you can look at font size on your control panel in order to be able to change that. Anytime you're using a laptop or a tablet and you're not able to be back in your seat and getting that support from the chair, I would say something needs to be done. So whether it's increasing the font size or then you might need to have that projected onto some type of an external monitor.
Okay, great, thanks. We've got a couple more people just typing here, Melissa.
Oh, no
and
problem.
just so everyone knows, we will have the recording of this webinar put on the members area of the website along with her slides. Okay, I see people typing. Okay, here's one for you, Melissa. Regarding phone size and hand size, do you have any data demonstrating how people use them? I see larger phones used via one hand holding and the other navigating the screen. In this case, the impact of phone size is less significant on the hand and may benefit the eyes.
Sorry, it was breaking up there a little bit. But I can see the bottom portion of the question. Um, could you repeat the first? I see this case, the impact of the phone size is less significant on the hand and may benefit the eyes, but you were breaking up at the beginning portion of the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's regarding phone size and hand size. Do you have any data
Okay.
demonstrating how people use them?
No, I didn't find anything in the literature other than the pictures that I had said that you saw there, looking at the actual phone screen size and what your thumb can reach. Because I do agree, you do tend to see now. I think it's a result of the screen being so large that you have that one hand that's holding onto the phone, and then you're using, I think, typically your index finger a lot more now. I'm wondering if there'll be future studies looking at this because the screen size now seems to be getting larger and larger as opposed to, again, when you had the iPhone 5S out. You would probably use that one, had more one-handed use than you're seeing some of the larger phones now.
Okay, any suggestions for tablet and keyboard use simultaneously in terms of position of both, i.e. two keyboard trays or tablet propped on a holder?
So if you're using a tablet, if it's your predominant, like that's what you're using as your main screen, I would suggest that you're using one of the devices um, like this. There's similar ones that Ergotron has that would just have your tablet and not a screen because you can put it on a lap like an inline document holder like I said, but that's not even ideal because that we'll probably get it to about the height of a laptop, and that is still too low for anyone. So a tablet, I would say, is not something for long-term use, and but there is something like the C clamp you could get for your workstation that would allow you to have better neutral neck postures. But you just have to be careful there too, as far as how large the font is on the screen, that you're allowing yourself to be able to sit back in your chair and you're not leaning forward. But again, there are Bluetooth external products you can get for tablets that would be recommended if it's using for long-term use.
Okay, and the
I thought you
participant
asked
act.
for drawing, not viewing. So then you're interacting with the screen constantly. That might be if you're using something to draw on the tablet, you might actually benefit more. Just I've never had this question, so I'm just thinking that if it was on some type of a inline document holder and you could rest your arm on your work surface, because if it was on some type of a C clamp like that, you would have your arm elevated and you're reached out, which is not great either. It's almost like you're going to be flex forward with your neck. Again, I don't think it'd be used for anything long term, but if you could rest your elbow or your arm while you were drawing, it would be better than if you had your arm reached out.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't see anyone typing, but if you do, please go ahead and type them in the chat box. You've definitely given us lots to think about, Melissa.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions coming up, so oh, wait, we have something coming.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
That's what I was just
Thank
going to say. Thank you very much, Melissa, on behalf of ACE. I'd like to thank you for this and for taking the time to present to us this very, very enlightening subject. And we will have your presentation on the members area of the website along with your slides.
Perfect. Thank you.